Best advice for a CISO. Go.
Focus on organization culture. Does it align with your personal values? Does it align with your strength and opportunities? And will it help you grow?
It's time to begin the CISO Series podcast.
Welcome to the CISO Series podcast. My name is David Spark. I am the producer of the CISO Series. And joining me for this very episode is my co-host. He is the operating partner over at YL Ventures. His name is Andy Ellis. Andy, say hello to the nice audience.
Hello to the nice audience, and hello to the not nice audience if you happen to join us today.
We will embrace the not so nice audience too. That's a good point. We do embrace both sides.
We'll help you become nicer.
Yes. We want to bring you over to the not dark side, if you will.
Oh, no, the dark side can be nice too. We have cookies.
Oh, there you go. We're available at CISOseries.com. Where we have all our programming is there. And our sponsor for today's episode, you know them. Everybody knows them. It's Palo Alto Networks. We're thrilled to have them on board. Thank you very much, Palo Alto Networks, for joining us. Now, we are recording this episode actually late September, but this episode drops in November, just before Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving is the kickoff to the holiday season. And Andy, you and I are both of the Jewish faith. We have a significant percentage of our audience that is Israeli and Jewish faith. Question: does it annoy you, upset you, irritate you, anything like that when people wish you a Merry Christmas?
Not at all.
Same here.
I take it in the spirit that they're coming from as an individual. That said, if I'm in a store, I prefer Happy Holidays, but if someone says Merry Christmas, fine, whatever. Doesn't bother me.
It's all meant positively. Nobody's, that's my feeling. I have no problem with it whatsoever. Wish me Merry Christmas.
Now, if you're wishing me Merry Christmas before Thanksgiving, I might have some words for you then. You'll probably get a Happy Hanukkah back from me.
There you go. Well, I have no, and also Hanukkah's coming much earlier too than Christmas too. So I think it's all right that we wish Happy Hanukkah before they wish a Merry Christmas.
Absolutely. And in fact, I have friends that they'll wish me a Happy Hanukkah and I'll reply Merry Christmas because I know that's what they observe.
Right. But for the person at the grocery store who doesn't know.
Yeah, it totally doesn't bother me.
I did not even an iota, whatever. So for all those people that thinks it bothers us, it doesn't. There are some, I think.
There are some it does bother, so I'm not going to speak for everybody.
I won't speak for everyone either. But no, I could care. Not that I could care less. I just appreciate the spirit in which it's given. It's all meant positively.
Yeah, here's my thing, which is if you're going to take out the Merry Christmas, and I've seen this, companies will send out a holiday card and they say Happy Holidays, but it's green and gold with stars and it's sent on December 24th, and it's a Christmas card that just says Happy Holidays. I feel more excluded by that than if the card had just said Merry Christmas. Because now it's like, oh, we're going to pretend we're not sending you a card for Christmas, but we're really sending you a card for Christmas.
Just send me a card for Christmas. I got no problem with it.
Send me a card for Christmas if you want, or send me a holiday card, or send me both.
Send me a Merry Christmas card, dress up in the nativity scene. I'm fine with it.
Yeah. In fact, the most beautiful Hanukkah card we actually get is from cousins on my wife's side who are very devout Christians. And they send us the most religious Hanukkah card I have ever seen. It's amazing. I look forward to getting it every year because they're totally embracing it. But if they sent us a Christmas card, I'd be cool with that too.
There you go. We're saying to our audience, feel free to wish us a Merry Christmas. We'll take it.
Yep.
We'll accept it in the spirit that it is given. In fact, I'm going to wish a Merry Christmas to our audience too as well.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy Thanksgiving, Happy Hanukkah, Festive Yule, Happy Solstice.
Merry Festivus.
I feel like we need to drop in the Happy Diwali too, right? So,
there you go. Happy Diwali too.
It's happening right now.
Right. So we just paused it, yeah.
That, by the way, the voice you're hearing right now, that is our guest. He is the former CISO for Nissan Americas. I just met him in Nashville when we were doing a recording at the Avanta conference. So thrilled that he's joining us. It is Arvind Bansal. Arvind, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, David.
That's something I'd like to avoid.
Why are so many companies unprepared for phone-based social engineering? As an industry, we're very familiar with the attack surface presented by email. A good spam filter eliminates a lot of potential threats. But the recent MGM Resorts breach was recently caused by alpha attackers finding an employee on LinkedIn and calling into a help desk. In a LinkedIn post, Social Proof Security CEO Rachel Tobeck said phone-based attacks work due to a lack of verification protocols, easy spoofing of identity and phone numbers, and help desks being incentivized to resolve calls quickly. Andy, I will start with you. Why do so many organizations, and I'm going to admit, we haven't talked about this much at all, so I think we're guilty as well. Why do so many organizations not give this attack surface the attention it deserves, as we clearly see it needs?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of complexities here, and Rachel Tobeck is so correct when she names, like, here's these basic core problems.
Yeah, she's awesome. I've met her too as well. She's great.
Love her. What's the core problem is that we run our businesses, our command and control infrastructure, over completely unauthenticated protocols, email and telephone, right? And so there's this whole trust-based model that's like, oh, you trust an input that comes to you and you do something with it. And in fact, I will even challenge the whole thing that a good spam filter eliminates a lot of potential threats. A good spam filter eliminates junk. It doesn't actually eliminate real threats. People who carefully craft emails that are going to get through, right? It deals with the spam, but the person who makes a phone call isn't spam. I get the spam phone calls. It's an automated recording. That's not a threat. The threat is somebody who calls me and says, hey, Andy, this is David Spark, but I've never actually talked to you. Mm-hmm. And now what do we do? And how few companies have built processes to do verification and validation to say, hey, when I get a request from someone, how do I know that's a real request so that I know whether it's a threat or not?
Very good point. Arvin, first of all, have you dealt with this before, creating security training for phone-based attacks?
2014. That was the last time I worked on looking at phone-based security. And it brings back the memories from the DEF CON hacking village, where we saw some of the greatest demos of how simple it is to break into organization using phone phishing pieces. But let me come back to you, the original question. What happened at MGM and how are we doing across the industry for that?
And I should point out to our audience, you're going to hear this in November and we're recording in September. So it's possible a lot more information may come out between the two. So go ahead, though, Arvin.
Yeah. So the way I look at it, David, there are 3 layers that we need to look at from security perspective for phone hacking or breaches. The very first part is, if you look at the business outlook of it, you will see that majority of breaches, what kind of breaches we've been hearing about or seeing in the newspaper, and how many of those breaches were attributed to phone phishing. And you will see the number is dramatically low. You might hear a lot about email phishing. You might hear a lot about breaking into infrastructure, but how many of those breaches really reference to phone hacking? So that's the first part. That's the visual of what business leaders, technology leaders, and security leaders are hearing, internalizing, and working on from the frame of reference, breach frame of reference they have.
So when they hear it's low, they think it's not something to concern themselves with.
It gets reprioritized, lower risk, much lower in the layers of priorities they have. Now, the second part is, the question to ask is, where does phone, AV, and other systems sits in an organization, right? So if you start talking about a decade ago, they were all part of IT. And within IT, you will have Avayas of the world, Ring Centrals of the world, Alcatel-Lucent of the world, providing those technologies and supports. And then gradually, those things started moving into soft phones and web-based systems, right? So that landscape shifted. And the third layer that immediately started coming in, business was looking for outsourcing. Business was looking for cost cuttings, right? So where do these help desk phone-based support systems really sit? Probably a lot of them are outside US.
Good point.
Parts of Asia, whether it's India or Philippines, or you're looking at call centers being opened in Europe or LATAM. So how do you secure something that's out of the company in most organizations already? And the answer is, we have a contract. and the contract has clause, and those companies and people are supposed to be up to certain level. But are they really at that level? Right. So that's the second layer, business breach framework, and looking at where does these systems and technologies sits and who actually operates and picks up the call on the other side of the phone. Now, the third part of that is how do we secure these technologies and systems? One is, of course, you can build standards, controls, policies, frameworks. But then to execute those standards, controls, and frameworks, you need technologies. And that's where, you mentioned today's sponsor, Palo Alto, is doing a lot of work in that space, right? And we have tons of other security vendors. They're all working towards it. But in my experience, David, the landscape shifts. Data center security was paramount. And then all of a sudden, cloud security becomes paramount. So everybody is trying to secure cloud. Where is the vendors for securing the phone-based attacks? Can we list 5 companies or solutions that we have interacted with in the last 5 years? No. So it's the entire ecosystem, David. If we start looking at the breach references, if we start looking at who's serving these service and system, and then we get to how to protect it, you will see there are tons of gaps there.
What would you advise?
Are we doing enough to support whistleblowers in cybersecurity? Deciding to voice security concerns, either internally or to a regulatory body, isn't something to be taken lightly. Andrada Fiskutian at CSO Online outlines what organizations can do better to facilitate internal whistleblowers. Now, this needs to start with having a clear policy to allow for confidential reporting of issues by employees in the first place. This should also be tied with multiple reporting options to let the employee keep anonymity, ranging from a hotline to reporting through a specialized office. So I'll ask you, Andy, have you set up policies to do whistleblowing and anonymity for that matter? And how else can companies create a culture where employees feel safe blowing the whistle?
So certainly every public company should have this, and most companies do. You have some sort of anonymous hotline that gets handled by the general counsel, actually. It usually gets reported to the board that somebody has reported to it, and then there's an investigation.
So, by the way, this is, when you say general counsel, is this usually something that cyber does not deal with at all, or they do?
Right. If it doesn't even come to cyber, like this is that's straight to the top, hits the general counsel, board sees it. Now there's going to be investigation driven by the general counsel's office.
Right.
Now, as the CISO, I want to make it that people can come to me and say, hey, I disagree with what's going on here. Come tell me. Lots of different ways you can do that and show them that you'll listen. The biggest challenge, and I went and read this article, is this article really wasn't about whistleblowers. This was really about a disagreement of prioritization. It used the Mudge example, Mudge who did go and do a whistleblowing. But when you read Mudge's complaint, a number of the issues in there were things that I don't think rose to the level of being a whistleblower. Right. This was, there were a number of problems. They were prioritized in a different order than he agreed with. And he wanted to whistleblow that they did not do the prioritization in the order he would have.
But we've seen variations of exactly that. In that, I'm sure you've had employees that get really concerned about a vulnerability and want you to escalate it,
right,
and you don't agree with them, and then they get really annoyed because it's kind of their world and they think it's important, right?
Exactly. Or it's somebody else's world and they want somebody else to go fix it. I've certainly had that. Like, we're pushing on a program and they're like, well, why are you pushing on this? This other person's program is much dangerous.
So the quick question to you, and then I want to throw it to Arvind. How do you acknowledge that person? Make it clear that I'm hearing you. I understand you. I understand the importance you think. Just want you to know this is part of a larger milieu, and I appreciate you coming to me. Like, I'm assuming say all the things I just said, or is there more to it?
Exactly, right? You say, yeah, I hear you. Look, there's a lot of good work to be done. And the biggest challenge that a security leader has is to be able to communicate that we are doing a fraction of everything we could do. And sometimes there will be valid disagreements. And look, if you want to go do some work that I don't currently prioritize, I'm not going to criticize you for that. I think there's great work to be done.
All right, Arvind, throw it to you. What is sort of the whistleblower environment that you have created? Or not, excuse me, maybe I didn't set that up right. I go, what if the environment allows for whistleblowers to exist?
Right. So there's a lot that we need to think about from environment perspective for a thriving whistleblower perspective in security. So I was just thinking about from business perspective, the very first part is being a whistleblower. What does that mean? And what's the analogy in the industry? So I spent about a decade at Citigroup. We had a very robust program in financial industry. And it wasn't a program that a leader of a security department created. The leader of the company created. It actually drives, if we look beyond those layers, it's driven by the law, and there is an agency that actually seek out and support and pursue those kind of things, right? So you have SEC out there, publicly listed companies. Somebody wants to be a whistleblower, can have those channels and means to go through and actually execute on those things and have the protection from the legal side of it, right? And that's because the companies are breaking laws. Now, we take the same analogy into cyberspace. What laws are being broken, right? And how much educated the industry is about those laws? And what are the implications of companies not following those laws? So I think, in my perspective, we are not there yet. If we are expecting that people will walk in and give you the whistleblower piece for the cybersecurity part of a company, which is publicly listed, I think we have a lot of work to do. And it starts with the laws becoming more stringent, the leaders becoming more educated and accountable for meeting those laws, and then having some protections outside of the corporate environment, right? So that to me is paramount and the starting point of doing a really solid job in the whistleblower space. And then, of course, I agree with Andy. It goes to the general counsel, the discussion needs to happen. And of course, you're part of a corporate organization, so you have to follow the structure. And then from the industry and law, we get to the business side of it in the corporate. The third part is the technical and execution pieces. How many times the CEOs and the business leaders really talk in their town halls about bringing out security defects, about, hey, we are there to fully support you. Here's the channel, and here's how you can do it. How many times does that happen in the technology CIO world? If I put myself into the CIO shoes, dude, what are you going to find? Tons of things that we are not doing well in technology. So, how do we align those incentives for CIOs and CTOs to be part of this and maybe have them drive these things, have them build those dashboards? It's no different than Mark Bainoff in Salesforce when the diversity becomes crucial for the world about half a decade ago. He had his dashboard of every leader accountable to show him what are the numbers and progress happening. So my take on this is, David, unless we have, to Andy's point, the leadership buying into it, coupled with the industry infrastructure, regulation, laws, governing bodies supporting those pieces, and then have the actual technology owners realize it's helping them, not finding faults in them, this area is not going to grow.
Before I go on any further, I do want to mention our sponsor, Palo Alto Networks. Now, I know you are all aware of them. You know them as the global cybersecurity leader and a big supporter of our work. They protect more than 80,000 customers globally, help them safely embrace cloud native architectures and ship secure applications by default. Now, Prisma Cloud by Palo Alto Networks is the world's only cloud native application protection platform, or CNAP, to deliver security coverage from code to cloud. They help customers break down the operational silos between engineering and security teams to accelerate secure application development and build scalable, predictable cloud workflows. With numerous native integrations into developer tooling and powered by the industry-leading open source policy as Code Engine Chekhov, Prisma Cloud unites code builders and defenders across a common framework. Industry-leading threat intelligence provided by Unit 42 and integrated web application and API security capabilities help protect against emerging and zero-day cloud threats. As the global cybersecurity partner of choice, Palo Alto Networks is a recognized leader across more than a dozen industry analysts and third-party reports and surveys. You know where to find them. Just go to paloaltonetworks.com to learn more.
It's time to play What's Worse?
It's time to play What's Worse? All right, Arvin, I know you know how this is played because you came to our live show and you saw us play this live. So what we have is two scenarios. Both are not ideal, but you have to pick which is the worst of the two. I make Andy always answer first. And this one comes from a listener who wishes to be anonymous. There's nothing greatly revealing, but I guess he doesn't want to be associated with the show, is what I'm thinking.
or with this scenario.
Or this scenario, who knows? So this comes from anonymous, although I do know who it is, but I have to say anonymous because that's what the person requested. So other people, I'll accept anonymous. If you want to send in a scenario that actually happened to you and you want it to be anonymous, please send it in. Please do. All right, here we go. And we've done variations of this one before, so this is not going to be a big shock to you, Andy. So this is the key thing, promoting an extremely technical person able to resolve any problem, but with really poor communication skills and no understanding how senior leadership functions. Or you hire someone with the complete opposite skill sets, amazing communication skills. It really is a master of dealing with senior leadership, but technical skills, pretty pathetic. What's worse?
So I think a lot's going to depend, and I know you hate when I start with it depends.
I hate it depends, yeah.
On to what level are you promoting them?
Mm-hmm.
But that said, I'm going to go with, let's assume that we're like, maybe director or VP level.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say that probably the first one is what's worse, because I'm not allowed to teach them. That's generally our rule is I can't say, well, I'll promote the technical one and I'll teach them the personal skills.
Right, because that it negates the whole thing.
It negates the whole scenario. But given that I have the technical person on staff,
mm-hmm.
then what I'm missing is the people and process skills. So if I can bring in that person, now I have a scenario where maybe I do have some tension because this person wanted the promotion, but at least I have the full set of skills on my team. So I'm going to go with promoting that person
the technical person
who is incapable of learning the people skills at all, because that's, for the scenario, is the worst situation.
All right.
But I don't like either one of them.
No, well, that's the idea. Neither one is good. All right, Arvin, I throw this to you. Which one is worse of these two scenarios?
So for me, I would just say there are two sides of the coin, David. If I'm working for a smaller size of the company, and if I'm working in a sector, let's say manufacturing versus financial and technical, I'm leaning more towards it's good to have a technical guy on the team because the team size is smaller and you really need someone to be jack of all trades, and we can work on the communication part of it, right? You really want to fix the problem.
But you have to promote one of these two people. Are you promoting the technical person or the savvy business person?
And you can't fix their gaps. That's part of the rules, is you cannot mitigate the scenario.
Their gaps are there.
Yeah.
They're going to stay there. They're not going to improve.
And look, David, the scenario wasn't promote one or the other. It was promote the technical or hire in.
So, excuse me.
Yes.
Hire out someone with the opposite skill set.
Right. That was why I went with the better to hire out, because now I get both sets of skills in the team. Whereas if I promoted, I would not have that set of skills.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So look, I would take communication any day over technology.
Really?
And the reason I say is I think a lot of us feel security is complex, but it is not. At the end of the day, the simple analogy I would give is it's a police and thief situation. You are really trying to make sure bad people are out of the door, and you're trying to make sure that, hey, the same reasons that other people are getting breached from doesn't happen to us, right? So there's a lot of known processes, technologies, tools, and function that can be utilized. But if you're not able to communicate the risk to the senior management, then it's a problem. And that's where my caveat is, I would promote communication if I'm in a larger organization. And if I'm working in financial, technology, healthcare, high moving sector where it's crucial to get the buy in. But let's say if I'm working on a smaller firm, the number of people, startups, mid-sized company, there are only so many people you can hire, right? And the budgets are restrained. So you have to look at where do I get the biggest bang for my buck? And that's where you start making those assumptions of, hey, I really need someone who understands technology and who can do 3, 4, 5 different jobs instead of being fixed into a bucket. And that's where I would go for the technology guys, right?
I realize that this, I think, would change a little bit. I should have altered this what's worse scenario to not hire out, because it's the best of both worlds. It's like I still get to have the technical guy and I hire out. It should be the alternate, like promote one or promote the other.
Yep.
This is what should make it more challenging here. But it's still, I think your answers would stay the same, correct?
Probably.
Absolutely. To me, in my experience, it's not about what specific skills, one skill that you have. If I have less money and I have to deal with multiple drills, I will go for technical because that's the hardest finding thing. And I will become that communication guy.
Okay, what's the risk?
How useful are CVE numbers? I'm not questioning the utility of a single number to track known software issues across the industry, but a recent piece by Jake Edge on lwn.net questioned the usefulness of the common vulnerability scoring system used to contextualize these vulnerabilities. Now, we have constantly mentioned on the show how that numbers should not be used to determine the importance in your environment. Jake Edge documented several instances of popular open source projects receiving critical scored CVEs, which were later disputed to not being vulnerable at all or downgraded to much lower scores. Now, this not only causes extra work for open source projects, but also has implications for service level contracts and government regulations that require quick patching of critically scored vulnerabilities. The CVE system isn't going anywhere anytime soon, but Andy, how should we factor them in their scoring of your overall risk profile?
So I think there were two separate points in Jake's article. One was around when somebody reports a vulnerability in software that they don't have the right details on. Maybe they misscored it or they don't actually understand what's going on, and so they're misreporting. I think that's certainly a problem, but we shouldn't throw out the baby with that bathwater. The second problem that CVSS has, and I get to actually say I was the first consumer of CVSS back when it was being standardized, so I probably have more experience with it than most people, including having my own bespoke scoring system in the early days when I didn't like what was happening there, is we should recognize that CVSS is about scoring a hazard, not an entire risk. This is the hazard presented on one system or set of systems by a vulnerability. Without the context of what that gives access to, what is the attack path an adversary could have, you can't prioritize solely based on CVSS. That's its biggest problem. I think people don't want to go back to the world before CVSS. You could look at EPSS as a potential replacement for it. But you should remember that before we had CVSS, we used to have to go in and argue that we should patch something because it was a high vulnerability or a medium vulnerability. And people love to argue with qualitative assessments like that because something's like right on the boundary of medium high. I say it's medium, you say it's high, or vice versa. We would spend so much time arguing about these relative priorities on a 9 box of risk versus likelihood. And when you walked in and said, this is like a 6.78, everybody just shuts up because the math is just so convoluted. They don't want to understand it. Even though there's only like 42 CVSS scores that ever come out, it feels like there's a lot more.
So it is a form of standardization, even though there are debates over it, how it's relevant to your art, but it is one score that has been accepted.
Absolutely. And so it's easy to get past the arguments for 99% of the vulnerabilities. And on the 1% that matter, you should absolutely do your own negotiation and rescoring and figure out what you want to do with it.
All right, Arvind, how have these CVSS scores helped, hurt, or do not have a major impact in your environment?
early on, David, if we talk about a decade ago, and Andy raised a good point there about CVSS and CVE, they were tremendously helpful because remember, security was just starting off, and majority of security work at that point in time was scanning our systems and finding those security defects, and then how do we know which one to fix? And CVS Core became the sort of founding foundation of starting that discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And it is only after a few more years then we started talking a lot about identities, then we started talking about a lot on firewall pieces, and then we started conversations on the data protection and all. And all of a sudden, the technology was taking off big time. So it was challenging to see tons and tons of security vulnerabilities, defects, and how do we prioritize them. And that's where some of the security smart guys, they came out with solutions like Kenna Security, acquired by Cisco now. How do we prioritize that? How do we add more layers to which one to work on first? Which one has the biggest impact? And then a few years later, that sort of reduced the value but did not eliminate the value of CEV. And then it became attack surface, which attack paths attackers can get into. Let me just fix those. And now we are talking about, hey, the IT has moved to cloud and there are tons of codes and PaaS and SaaS services in use. How do we think about securing everything? And part of those we don't even own. So I believe in the past it was tremendously useful and people were developing frameworks and using like Stride threat modeling and all. But in today's world, technology wise, CVEs are a good starting point, but they are not the go to point for that. Number one. Number two, if we look at the business side of it, what are we trying to accomplish by using these scores? It's not just about technology guy getting a security defect and let's fix it, but it's more about which systems are impacted, what business function those systems are serving, are those revenue focused, regulatory focused, have a potential economic service impact. And then you bring in all of those factors together to say, yes, this is the first one I want to attack, or this is on top of my list. So while CVEs, in summary, I would say technology wise, they are not serving the function which they were built onto. And the article pointed out some of the good examples, how the systems can be less than perfect. I think in today's world, it's changed drastically and dramatically. CVEs does play a role, but it's so minor. Looking at the business focus, looking at the risk focus, we need to do a better job in that space. But that's where I would leave you.
What's broken about cybersecurity hiring?
A report from the analyst firm Cybersecurity Ventures recently predicted there will be 3.5 million unfilled cybersecurity jobs in 2025, with 750,000 in the U.S. alone. Okay, just so everyone knows, we've reported on this number from Cybersecurity Ventures, who actually gets it from others as well. The number just keeps going up. I think over a number of years, we are going to say the entire human population is what it is, because it just keeps going up and up. But so if you're looking to break into the field, it's a good time to enroll in a boot camp and get some certifications, right? Not so fast. Cautioned Ben Rothke in a recent Medium post. He points to a couple of reasons why unfilled cybersecurity positions grew in recent years. Employers don't pay market rates for employees with significant experience. Hiring managers not giving HR meaningful job requirements to create accurate job posts, and outdated recruitment practices. I know that's a big one for you, Andy. All play a role. The roles available are specialized, making them more suited for internally filling from existing IT staff rather than hiring new staff with generalist certifications. I'm going to start with you, Arvind, on this. We address this issue again and again. What of any of these factors that Rothke brought up would be the easiest actually to tackle and solve? Because the problem just keeps compounding. We got to figure one of these things we can deal with. Which one do you think we can deal with?
I think we need to deal with the experience part first. And to me, that's the foundational. We can talk about money and job descriptions and all, but it's all about what exactly are we looking for in a cybersecurity candidate, right? So I'll just take you to the history, very quickly. In the past, it was all about, hey, do you know security technologies? Are you that security guru that I want to hire who's going to come in and fix all my problems, right? And that's where the problems of getting the best talent and paying the best talent, market rate, and all of those stem from. But if we take a step back, how is cybersecurity any different than how we build talent in IT, right? So, how do we build talent on the business side? We all need to start somewhere, and we need to start tackling at the basics level. So, to me, I think, David, we need to focus a lot more on building a bench of cybersecurity talents at all levels versus hiring these rock stars and paying them arms and a leg to get them into the board. And the reason I say is, to give you an example, in September, I was part of the Grace Hopper conference, and the focus of the conference was to bring in the future generation of women and non-binary technologists through connection, inspiration, and advancement, right? Where is cybersecurity in that conference? Why are we not there? Why are we not looking at the non-conventional way of bringing in the right people?
Well, that goes to historical hiring practices.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the answer to that we have to break away from.
Yeah.
And we address it again and again. Andy?
I'm trying to decide if there's anything new to add to this one. Like, at the end of the day,
No, but my question here is, what's the easiest to tackle first? I think, because we've talked this a lot, but I'm just interested. What do you think is, like, we could actually solve this pretty easily?
so employers have to solve this. It cannot be solved outside of the employment cycle. And the way to solve this is, the next time you have an open position in your team, promote someone into it. That's it. Until there's no one left to promote, and only then go hire. Because that's how you're going to bring new people into the career field, is by saying, oh, I need a principal architect. Well, I've got an architect. I'll promote them to senior with a plan to make them principal next year. And I'll promote one of my engineers to architect. And then I can go hire an engineer, or I can go hire an analyst. But as long as you keep saying, look, I've got a problem right now and I need somebody with 85 skills to solve it, A, you're not going to find that person. But B, you're not going to create opportunities for people to get into the career field and develop the talent you need.
So there's parts of this answer I love, and there's parts of this answer I go, oh my God, there's a ton of issues here.
Yep.
The parts that I love is, I've worked at so many companies that in the process of me being hired said, oh, we very much promoting within. And then when you work there, you realize they don't do that at all.
Right.
At all. They just hire someone or it's one of those things like, oh, geez, let's just promote this person because I really don't want to look for somebody. But at the same time, if you're always promoting from within, that if you leave a job and you're looking for another senior position, it's going to be very hard because they're constantly promoting from within.
I think this is not a binary problem, but we are so far over the let's always hire from outside.
Right. I get it. I don't think it's going to come to that extreme, what I described.
Right. That it's, if you have somebody who's a marginally credible candidate internally, take them.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody from outside, you're going to have to lower your standards, and they won't know your company.
And you'll probably have to pay them a hell of a lot more than you would pay to promote the person too.
Yep.
Yeah. I agree.
I totally agree with that. So, Andy, great point. We have to promote from internally. I would just put another layer of that, and probably that's where Andy was leaning towards. How do we build internal bench of talent? How do we stop thinking about, hey, we have positions to fill, we have to build the teams?
1% leadership, as Andy points to it. That's his book.
Yeah.
Oh, he's going to pull out the chapter.
Performance development should be applied to every person on your team. That's how you do it.
Absolutely, yeah.
I will also point everyone to the episode of Defense in Depth we did with Jesse Whaley, who's the CISO of Amtrak. He is the poster child on how to do exactly this. Man, he has got a pipeline to be hugely envious of. Go ahead, Arvind.
Absolutely. And the final point I would make is we have to have that 5-year, 10-year view as a security leader to build that bench. So instead of focusing on creating job description or promoting people or filling position, what is my big picture view of next 5 years? Who's going to start my initial pipeline of the talent from SOC, vulnerability management, IAM, and how am I getting in next 2-3 years internal managers and bringing that management field to senior management field so that we have people coming in without getting impacted by everyday rockstar hiring or paying more prices for those people. So one example is, hey, just cast a wide net of getting lots of interns to start with, bring them into the company, let them learn the culture and work on it, and then start building those benches of future managers in individual departments and go from there. You'll have a stable pipeline. You will have lots of diversity coming in right from the bottom. People will be learning the culture and executing on what needs to be done.
And if for some reason you like the term rock star hiring, and I hate it, but if you like it and you want to learn from rock stars, I was at 3 concerts this year, Taylor Swift, Blackpink, and Billy Joel. And I'll tell you, at any time, there was one rock star on stage, and there were thousands of people around them who nobody would call a rock star, but were critical to the success of those performances. And that's what you need in your team. You don't need more rock stars. You need more people who show up and do the work and advance your mission as an organization.
Well said, Andy. Yeah.
Make your security team like the band Blackpink or Billy Joel or Taylor Swift.
And their entire support team, like the techie who walks out with the microphone and fixes a microphone.
All part of it, part of the team.
All part of it.
With that said, we're bringing the show to a conclusion. We did a supersized show, everybody. So my apologies for the extra calories you had to consume while listening to this episode. I want to thank our sponsor. That's Palo Alto Networks and the Prisma Cloud. Please check them out at paloaltonetworks.com. We greatly appreciate their support of this very said CISO series. Andy, thank you so much for coming and joining us as well. And Arvind Bansal, who was the former CISO of Nissan Americas, thank you so much. That was truly excellent. As always, I greatly appreciate the contributions from our audience. Please give me some more what's worse scenarios. You can give me anonymous or I can quote you. Either is perfectly fine by me. I like it. We just love wonderful scenarios. So thank you as always for contributing and listening to the CISO Series podcast.
That wraps up another episode. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please do. We have lots more shows on our website, CISOseries.com. Please join us on Fridays for our live shows, Super Cyber Friday, our virtual meetup, and Cybersecurity Headlines Week in Review. This show thrives on your input. Go to the Participate menu on our site for plenty of ways to get involved, including recording a question or a comment for the show. If you're interested in sponsoring the podcast, contact David Spark directly at david@cisoseries.com. Thank you for listening to the CISO Series podcast.